Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review. With us today, taking a look at a relatively novel game for the time period that it came out. I'm talking about Off-World Interceptor Extreme, a 3D driving combat game that originally saw release on the 3DO in November of 1994 before being converted over to the PlayStation and the Saturn, and originally seen release in September of 1995 in North America on the PlayStation before following with a November 95 release in the PAL and Japanese territories, and then coming out on the Saturn in October of 1995 in North America, and then November of the same year in the PAL and Japanese regions. So the premise for the game is actually quite unique. It says in the manual, you're a trash man and you dig smearing a planet's surface with outlaw scum. You're a bounty hunter with bloodlust on the brain and dollar signs in your eyes. Basically, you travel around from planet to planet, taking down all the fugitives, felons, swindlers, two-timers, terrorists, and other trash that infest all of the off-world colonies for money. In terms of the game, that means you just travel level to level, taking down the enemies, reaching the checkpoints before eventually facing a boss on each world. The premise for the game is actually very unique, and I don't really think there's any other games like it, especially for the time period that it came out. So I was actually really interested to give this game a go. Like always, I'll be talking about how it looks, how it sounds, how it plays, its content and lifespan, and ultimately whether it's still worth playing today and can feature in our PAL or worldwide Sega Saturn top 10s.
Hello.
Those of you who choose to go after him will be issued chips.
Sun chips?
To buy a radio-equipped vehicle.
So once you hit the main menu, you'll see you've got a few choices. You've got training mode, story, arcade, battle, and options. Heading into options, you can simply change the control setup and also turn the music and sound on or off. So like always, I'm going to start with the visuals first. An Off-World Interceptor is actually fairly interesting in this regard. We've got three-dimensional levels with two-dimensional pre-rendered assets, which means your vehicle, any opposing vehicles or enemies that you will face, and all obstacles on the tracks or flat 2D objects. Now, usually I'm a massive critic for pre-rendered graphics in games, but they actually work relatively well in Off-World Interceptor, and that's mainly because the pace of the game is so frenetic you don't really notice them. It's only if you draw to a dead stop that you can actually take in how low of a quality some of them are. Now, speaking of the pace of the game, it would be fair to say that this game is pure chaos from start to finish. There are bullets, missiles, enemies and objects flying around nearly all of the time, and it gets more and more intense the way you progress through the game, and the game does its very best to keep up with all of the action on screen. In fact, to be honest, I was quite surprised that the game didn't suffer from much more drastic slowdown than what you actually get in the game. There are actually loads of explosion effects within the game as well, although naturally with it being the Saturn, they're all mesh effect and not particularly appealing. Of course, the bright side is that because the game is so fast paced and there's so much going on, you won't really take much notice of it, and you will actually just grow to accept it and not really be bothered by it. In terms of the quality of the 3D levels themselves, I actually think the textures on the worlds look really good, and they're actually well developed. They don't really have any issues whatsoever. As well as that, the worlds have got a decent level of visual variety as well. Whether it's the actual surface, the terrain, all the colours of the sky, they all have a different feel to them, so you don't really feel like you're driving through the same locations constantly. Unfortunately though, the game does have one massive downside in the visual department, and that is the fact that it has a truly awful draw distance regardless of what level you are playing on, and it's only comparable really, as far as I can think anyway, to Gale Racer, which I reviewed a long time ago. An Off-World Interceptor suffers massively because of it, just like Gale Racer did. There's a huge level of darkness on some worlds or thick white fog on others to hide the fact that the game has such a short draw distance, and this means that scenery, enemies and other objects come into view at a very short notice period, and this does hinder the enjoyment of the game overall. What is a positive though is the quality of the video sequences in the game. A lot of people will know that the Saturn didn't always produce the best quality of video, but actually in Off-World Interceptor Extreme, it's actually quite good. There is a downside though, and that is the fact that the videos themselves are painstakingly cringy and very difficult to watch with any level of enjoyment.
Do we have to look at this thing again? This one better be dirty, fancy.
So moving on to the sound effects and music next, even just after a couple of minutes of playing this game, you'll quickly realize there's one style of sound effect that you're going to be hearing more than any other, and that is the basic gun attack from any vehicle that you use. Because you're going to be gunning down so many opponents and so many obstacles, you're going to be hearing your vehicle's basic gun noise more than any other sound in the game, and it does start to get repetitive. It doesn't matter that each vehicle actually has a different attack and they do sound a little bit different, because you're going to be firing them so much in each stage, they all start to get repetitive. Now that doesn't mean the sound effects within this game are actually bad quality, because I actually feel they're okay, and there's a decent variety as well. Explosions, nitro sounds, rear attack sounds, and you get a little voiceover as well when you're selecting different ones. It all actually sounds pretty decent. It's just a shame that you're going to be hearing that relentless firing sound so much. As well as this, we've got B-movie quality video sequences as well, and like I said before, these are very cringy in my opinion, and I get absolutely no enjoyment from them because I feel the level of acting in them is not particularly good. But I guess there will be some people out there who do find some of these sequences mildly amusing.
We should stop that crazy bastard. Look at him, he's nuts. Hello, Looney!
In terms of the music within the game, it's actually quite difficult to get a good grasp of it whilst you're playing the game, because the game is so relentless and you're going to be hearing so many sound effects. It's hard to take in the quality of the music, so I really had to listen to it separately. I did, and actually it's very fitting for the style of game it is, because this is a driving game where you can only move forwards. The music has this relentless drive factor to it that makes you want to just keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And in that sense, it is absolutely perfectly suited to the game. I'm not saying it is some all-time classic themes. I'm saying what is here is perfectly befitting for this style of game. So what I will do is give you some examples so you can see what I'm talking about. So moving on to the gameplay next, and we've got a 3D shooter slash driving game here. It's not a normal driving game in the sense that you can reverse and turn around or travel around the area freely. It is completely forward scrolling, whether that's in a straight line or diagonally, and this is probably the most challenging part of the gameplay to get to grips with. Once you do though, it actually plays relatively fine. Your vehicles have got a variety of things that they can do. Obviously you can accelerate, you can fire your main weapon, you can shoot missiles, you can use nitro boosts, you can jump and hover, you've got a rear attack as well. You can also change the view to a cockpit point of view, but this is very challenging to play in this regard. It actually reminded me a lot of hardcore 4x4, just completely uncontrollable really, due to the amount of scenery that you're moving up and down and bouncing over. It's a very, very challenging game to play in that regard. In fact, this is one of very few games I would say could possibly give you motion sickness, just due to the amount of bouncing and flying all over the screen that your car does. As you're bumping through each level, you will notice there are a few pickups you can get as well. The wrenches will repair damage to your car. The coins will obviously give you more money. The cannon will increase the basic power of your main weapon, and you can also pick up extra lives too. In terms of the HUD display, it pretty much shows all of that. The armor for your car, you've got a little map in the corner. Boss's health, if you're on a boss level, how far you've got left on the chase bar until you get to the end of the level. Current ammunition for your weapon, how much money you've got, and how many lives you've got remaining too. I think one thing that some people may notice is that certain elements of this game feel like they have been borrowed from a game known as Rock and Roll Racing, a game which came out about a year and a half before this on the SNES and the Mega Drive. It's very similar in both its visual aesthetic and the gameplay mechanics, in the way that you have a vehicle, you upgrade them, you can buy new vehicles that have more potential and upgrade those via collecting money in the races and obviously taking down the bosses. This is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt in my opinion, borrowed from Rock and Roll Racing, and that is actually one of my most favorite games of all time, which is one of the reasons I actually have a little soft spot for the way this game plays. It is actually very repetitive, and it's very difficult to play through this game in one go without getting bored, but it does play reasonably well. I don't have any issues with the way it plays. The arcade mode is slightly different to the story mode. You can freely pick which planet you go to, and all the vehicles have the same ratings here. You can't also save it as well. You've got to do it all in one go, which is a massive challenge. With the story mode though, once you finish one area, you will be given a passcode to use, and then you can restore your progress the next time. The last thing I want to say about the gameplay is the fact the game gets very difficult very quickly. If you're just using your basic vehicle, you'll get through the first world in the story mode thinking you've done pretty well. You'll get onto the next stage and you will just be destroyed very, very quickly. And this is actually quite a frustrating aspect in the game, and actually to get the most enjoyment out of this game, I would strongly suggest you use the cheat code so that you have more money, so that you can buy a better vehicle. Yes, I'm condoning that you cheat to play through this game, simply because that is the way you're going to get the most enjoyment. And in fact, even with the most powerful vehicle, once you get to the last stage, it is still very difficult on there, and you will find yourself getting blown up and destroyed time and time again. And of course, if you run out of lives, it will be game over. And in fact, to finish the last level, I actually turned on the invincibility cheat just to get the game done and dusted, because it's one of these games that once you've played it once, you're probably never going to come back and play again. So moving on to the content and lifespan next, and to go with the arcade mode and the story mode, we've got a very basic tutorial mode which simply puts you on a planet at random and you can drive around and familiarize yourself with everything your vehicle can do. There's no enemies at all, and the likelihood is once you've been on tutorial mode once, you will never revisit it ever again. We've also got a two-player mode as well, which was quite rare on Saturn games to start with. Remember, we'd seen games like Daytona USA and it was a one-player game only, and games that we'd seen with two-player modes like Gale Racer and Cyber Speedway, they weren't particularly impressive. And actually, Off-World Interceptor's two-player mode isn't particularly impressive either. It's not actually very enjoyable whatsoever, and I definitely wouldn't say it's a plus point in the game. In terms of the main mode of play, the story mode, there are 25 levels to progress through, and it will take probably around about an hour and a half or 2 hours if you could play through it all in one go non-stop. Now that's very unlikely if you're not going to use any of the cheat codes, because you'll probably find yourself dying over and over and over again. So the lifespan of the game will really depend on whether you wanted to persevere and try and complete the game genuinely without using any of the cheat codes, or if you were like me and decided you just wanted to experience the game once and play through it, so you turn on Infinity Money or indeed Invincibility. So like always, that leaves me with my two final questions. Is Off-World Interceptor Extreme still worth playing nowadays? And does it potentially make our pal and worldwide Sega Saturn top 10s? Now in terms of it being an overall experience that's worth going back to, I can't really recommend it. That's mainly down to the performance and the fact it came out far too early in both the Saturn and the PlayStation's life cycles to really make the most of the hardware. I feel if this game had come out 2 or 3 years later and the draw distance was much better, it would have been a much better game overall. Now, that doesn't mean it wouldn't appeal to people nowadays, because if you're a fan of perhaps Panzer Dragoon or even Space Harrier or Rock and Roll Racing, I feel there are elements of this game that would appeal to those people. Now, does it have the quality to make our PAL or worldwide Sega Saturn top 10s? It won't be any surprise when I say that it doesn't. I do feel that draw distance again is a real big hindrance on this game, but at the same time, it is by no means anywhere near the worst 10 games that I have played on the Saturn so far either. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on the game and my thoughts alone, and like always, I'm always interested in hearing what other people have to say, especially if you had this game when it came out and what you thought of it back then, and perhaps what you think of it now. Let me know with a comment down below, and like always, I'll be back in the near future with another review. Goodbye for now.